my Craftsman T210. As you saw on the display, it has 61, I believe it was, hours, and every 10 hours I do a routine service that is pointed out. In the service and maintenance schedule here in the owner's manual, there are quite a few things I'm going to be going through, what is done on each of those, and then there's a couple of things for 25-hour service. Check the deck pitch and stuff like that. I've done that as required, but at 50 hours there are a few more things. I always lump all this in with 10-hour services because I tend to try to keep my mower in the best possible shape. But I want to mention something here. In the manual and on that display where it shows the hours, my runtime display, that started flashing at 50 hours to change the engine oil. And it's even mentioned here, at 50 hours, change the engine oil. However, this is a Kohler 5400 series engine, and in its owner's manual, it mentions every 100 hours to change the oil. So I figure they know their engines better than anyone. Well, I did my 8-hour oil service. I didn't change this at 50 because, let me get this dipstick out here. As you'll see, in the oil, still looks great. So I didn't, a little warm because I just ran the engine. I didn't change this at 50, but I started thinking about it. And even though Kohler says 100, Craftsman says 50, figured I would just make it part of this 10-hour service to go ahead and change the oil. So I have my 2 quarts of Kohler synthetic blend oil. I like to use factory original parts, but I upped the game a little bit. Remember in my initial oil change, I mentioned this is the 12-05001 S1 filter that fits all Kohler engines. And the filter that came with this engine was black, but it was the same dimensions as this, their 52-05002 S1 filter, which holds a little bit more oil and I believe has a little bit better filtration inside. They call this their Pro Performance oil filter. But I'm going to use this here. I looked it up and the pressure ratings are the same. 8 to 11 PSI engines, and this fits that. So this is going to work. Add a little bit more oil, so technically a little bit more cooling. So I'm not going to go through this whole oil change procedure. I've already gone through that in a previous video, which I'll link in the description. But I'm going to change my oil, then I'm going to show you the extra things that are in this service schedule that I go through every 10 hours, and even some of the 25-hour stuff and the 50-hour stuff, and tell you how I keep my T210, T2200, whatever, Craftsman or MTD mower in excellent working order. So far, no problems. Knock on the engine. Not an engine knock. That was a luck knock, just FYI. Side note, I got criticized for my Evian bottle the last time, though it worked. This time, Tropicana low acid, no pulp. Oil changed, so let me run down the 10-hour list. First, check battery terminals. Both of mine are good. Still no corrosion. And I keep my battery in shape. This is the original battery, 2 years now, using a Die-Hard battery tender, which I added the cable for. So that's good. Next section, grease all lubrication points. I'm also lubricating every point where there's any pivot, like right here. I'm going to do so with a dry lube. I'm also going to inspect the belts and the pulleys. I can tell right now they both look good. Seeing, yeah, still a good edge, and I have no pulley noise. Nothing seems loose, so that's good. I accidentally turned it off record, but I also spray this on the pivot. There's a little bushing in here where this arm connects. I spray it there, work it back and forth, and I do the same thing on the rocker mechanism for the hydrostatic transmission. There's also these arms. Give that a little bump and then I'll wipe it down. Which I forgot to do on the other side. Going to check the air cleaner and the pre-cleaner. I replaced this at 25 hours, so yeah, just a little bit right there, not bad at all. See what the filter under it looks like. You know what? I have a brand new filter. So just to give you an idea of the color difference, white versus that. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and I'll change this filter. And as always, I'm using genuine Kohler parts. I like to keep with the original. Now this is the new pre-filter and you're supposed to oil these. But what I've done is I've cheated. Since I do this every 25 hours instead of every 50 or 100, I think it is that it's recommended, I have blown out the one that I oiled the last time, the replacement. I'm just going to put this on there. And there we go. As good as new, literally new, because it's a new factory part. I do need to clean the nozzle and then just a little bit there. Get out that little bit of dirt. Here's that old filter. This is only 25 hours. I was kind of shocked. By the way, I solved the dust bowl problem with these 42-inch decks. I'll be covering that in an upcoming video, but it was an amazing find, totally by accident, so serendipity. But yeah, this was dirtier than I expected. The opening end just slips on. A little twist and it's on there. And I've had people complain about these plastic tabs on this air filter cover. I haven't had any problem with mine. It's stayed in place. It's not rattled loose. Dust my engine off here. Engine cover. Yeah, air filter's done now, so oil, air. By the way, I got to top off the oil. Grease all lubrication points, check intake screens, sharpen blades as needed. I replace the blades twice a year, though this year I didn't replace, but we'll take a look at them. And as you can see, it's not needed because these are gator blades. And a little hint, this is how I solved the dust bowl problem for these 42-inch decks. So nobody thinks I left that. I did cut it all out, but I want to mention I bragged about these gator blades and they are awesome. But I just scraped away that, or part of that. There are 2 points on this deck. There and right on the other side. Where it is? There it is. Under that pulley, the left pulley, it's not on this right one. But on that left pulley and right here at the front with these gator blades, there are 2 spots that it does allow buildup that I know did not happen with the standard or the mulch blades. I'm going to clean this off and then I'm going to try it before I release my gator blade video. I'll try and see if I add maybe an extra 2 minutes to wash time. What that does, but just want to be transparent. Gator blades have been awesome so far, and I cut away the thread. That thread. But there are 2 little buildup spots that I haven't noticed before. You know, the more I look at this underside of the deck, it's not as spotless as it is with the standard blades, so there apparently is a little bit of a trade-off. I think it's probably worth it as long as I periodically scrub this, but just FYI. Check tire pressure. I do that every time before I ride. I run mine low, 8 in the front, 10 to 12 in the back. Get nice good grip with these Turf Saver tires. People complain about that. A lot of times they just have too much pressure because these came way overinflated from the factory. Check tire pressure, clean the underside of the deck. That's done. Check safety interlock systems. I do that every time. That's where you can get off the mower with it running or with the blade engaged. If you don't have the emergency brake on with it running, it should turn off. With the blade engaged, it should turn off regardless when you go to get off the mower. Check mower blade stop time. That's making sure that the blade brake works properly. Mine does. I know as soon as I turn the blades off, they turn off with just a second or two, within a second or two. Inspect and lube the deck wheels. That's these, and I use, where'd I put my dry lube? There it is. I use my dry lube for this, the same dry lube I used for the deck, and I just spray right there a little bit, and right here a little bit, and I roll it. And I do this every 10 hours. This is part of my 10-hour, even though the manual says 25-hour. This is part of my 10-hour service, just to keep these working well. And they're starting to get a few little nicks. This one looks the better of the two. That's all it takes. Next up, check deck level and pitch. I do that regularly. I measure both sides, both the front and the back and the sides, to make sure that I get a nice even cut. That's good on my deck. It has been since I purchased it, so that's held up well. Next, and this is getting to a specific thing for the for the 50-hour service, and that, well, check belts. Check belts and pulleys for damage and wear. I've already looked at that. Actually, as I mentioned, I feel my pulleys, make sure they don't rattle. I listen to them as I'm cutting or as the mower is going, because usually when a mower's idling, you'll start hearing the pulleys start going bad, especially you engage the blades. You'll know if those start going bad. And this is a 50-hour service item. Now, I didn't check this at 50 hours because I was holding off for this video, but this is check the engine mounting bolt torque. There are 4 bolts come from the underside that hold this engine on. They're right there on both sides, and that is supposed to be 37 to 50 Newton meters, or 325 to 450 inch-pounds. Boy, don't you just love it when you record for about 2 or 3 minutes and don't have it on record. But along with checking these to make sure that this engine's still torqued, mounted to this chassis, or the frame rather, I'm going to also check these, or well, I would check these. This is in the instruction manual, to check the mount nuts for the blades, but because I changed these and I looked it up, I actually changed these in August. That was when I officially went to the Gator blades. Had a whole video recorded, just never edited it together, but like I said, it solved the dust bowl problem, so I'm a big fan of these. I'm going to leave them on for this season, but in the fall I will check them in my fall service and replace them if needed. If not, I'll take them off, look at them, make sure they're not warped and that there are no bad nicks, and retorque at that point. I'm supposed to check this intake screen along with the air filter and pre-filter, but I don't check this because I check it every time I mow. As you can see, it is clean as a whistle. I blow it out each and every mow. Check fuel lines and fittings. I inspect these each and every time I'm cleaning the engine after I finish mowing, like I do with just about everything, and you can see they're all in great shape. All the clamps are perfect. This fuel filter, the manual, the owner's manual, says to change this at 50 hours. I think it says 50 hours. Replace fuel filter. Yeah, 50 hours. But the actual manual says to do that at 100 hours. So I'm going to go for 100 hours simply because it looks perfect. And I use non-ethanol fuel. I do not use ethanol fuel. Only non-ethanol. It goes in any of my lawn equipment, my generators, my scooter, anything like that. So I'm good with the oil filter for another, well, 40,000 or 40 hours, excuse me, 40,000. Another 40 hours, and then I'll change that at 100. We changed the engine oil, so I've already replaced the oil filter with this new one, more capacity, so that's good. I've already cleaned and changed the air filter. I just mentioned the fuel filter. I don't have to adjust the valves until I think it's set at 100 hours to check the valves. Check the spark plug gap. I checked that at 25 hours. Probably should have recorded that, but I didn't. But my gap is still good. My spark plug is still perfect. No need to change it. So what's left? Let's see, let me go over my list here, make sure I've covered everything. Checked all the pulleys. The spark arrestor. The spark arrestor is up and right there, and it's still good. Nice and solid, not built up with carbon, anything like that. And you can see my muffler. Well, you can see this. But it still looks practically brand new because I store this inside. Goes right in there. Okay, other than topping off the engine oil, I think we're good on this 50-hour service, and combined with the 10-hour and a 25, all in one for this video. So I'm good. I'm going to check my oil here, make sure that I've got it at the proper level, and I'm going to have to add just a little bit more. Plus, I haven't cranked it since I added the oil. I need to crank it, then let it sit for a minute, then check the oil levels. Just going through this checklist, other than the things that you're supposed to check every time before you start the mower, then we're good. And that is a 10-hour / 50-hour service on a Craftsman T210 or Craftsman T220 or other similar MTD 42-inch mower with a Kohler 5400 series engine. But there is one other area that I did notice is going to need attention in the future. I don't know how you can see this, but notice some cracking right there on this little grommet. Now, I think this is just a dust boot or this ball joint that this sits on, but I'm gonna have to see if I can source that part, because I think in another 50, 100 hours or 2 more seasons or so, this is probably going to be cracked beyond what I would like it at. So that, out of my whole mower here, that's my only point that I see that has prematurely worn. One last thing worth mentioning, someone will point out that I didn't lubricate that, my steering gear. We can see it has that coppery coating on it. That is made to not need lubrication per the official service manual. So don't lubricate that. Now, if that wears off over, the next few hundred hours or however long this lasts, then maybe I might use some dry lube on it if that coating were to completely wear off. And I started noticing any binding on my steering, but it's still working well. As a matter of fact, adding grease to that, per mechanics that I've talked to and the official service manuals, will prematurely wear it because the grease will attract dirt and create problems. So just note that. Don't need to lubricate that little steering gear there that gives us that nice tight turn, or turn tight they call it. Love that new yellow oil filter. Engine oil after 50 hours. Ooh, that was almost a disaster. Engine oil after 50 hours in my Tropicana bottle. Thanks for watching.